Welcome to gardening in May in the Pacific Northwest. Now, to be fair, we sometimes have very nice Mays. This year, however, we are 15 degrees colder than we normally are. So even though at the time of this recording, it's the first week of May, our highs are 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, that is my high in May. And our overnight lows, we're not getting any frost anymore, but they are low 40s. We're not actually having much of a difference between our nighttime temp and our daytime temp. But what that means is everything is basically stuck in hibernation mode. So all of my cool weather crops, which don't mind cooler temps, but to be honest, when you're only having 51 degrees as your high, even the cool weather crops are not having a lot of growth. This is our lovely straw bale garden that we've got going on. And we put this on, the glass was getting, when we did have sunlight, a very few days that we had sunlight, the glass, if I didn't get out here and put it up fast enough, you can actually see where there's some white and yellow leaves, they got burnt. So we put this on here because it does still help trap a little bit of heat, but it lets light through, but there was some ventilation without me having to manually come out and do it. So the spinach is actually doing really well, especially the ones that we direct sowed. You can see those have grown really fast. So they're doing pretty well in this garden bed. So very happy with that growth. What's been interesting is these cabbage plants that are in here in this cold frame. I planted these at the same time. Now granted, they're two different plants. So this is cabbage and then I've got broccoli and cauliflower here. But these were planted at the exact same time, same day. But because these have been able to be a little bit warmer versus these guys, look at the size difference. That is what I mean, like 50 degrees is not conducive to plant growth. It pretty much puts them in hibernation or very, very incremental growth. So our garden is extremely stunted right now. I don't have much growing, and because of that, we are not planning on putting any of our warm weather crops out. We're gonna see what things look like Memorial weekend. So we'll look at transplanting out the tomato plants and the peppers. I'm not even trying to put them into our high tunnel yet where I have my lettuce, because even my lettuce is slowed. Because the high tunnel, it does offer some warmer temperatures, but unless we have direct sunlight, even with having the ends and the doors of these down, it's not, without sunlight on these cloudy days, it's not heating it up that much in here. Not enough for me to be able to actually have growth on the tomatoes or the peppers. So I'm actually leaving the cold weather plants in right now, and I'm just letting the lettuce continue to grow in here until the end of May, and by then we'll probably have harvested most of it, and then in will go the peppers and the tomatoes. So everything is just extremely behind, even our pasture. But you know, that's part of gardening. You just have to deal with that, and it's really important to know what plants you're putting in, what temperatures they actually will grow and excel at, and don't put them out too early. Even though normally this would be close to our planting time, I know by what the weather's doing right now that I'm not going to do them any benefit. There's no point in putting them out. Now, normally, here we've got, I've got a whole bunch of different kales growing in this patch, and kale does like cold weather. So the kale is doing pretty good right now. We've actually got some good growth there. And then normally I would be putting in our potatoes, and potatoes you can plant when it's cold out, that's fine. Or I should say, like, we're not having a lot of frost. You can plant them more as a cool weather plant, but we're so saturated because of all of the rain, and it's that cool where the soil temp's not very warm, plus it's cold. And I gotta be honest, I do not wanna be out here in the dripping rain, soaking, sopping wet when I'm putting in the potato crop. So the potatoes are gonna be another week or two before I put them in, because I don't want them to just rot, which is when it's cold and really wet. That often can happen when you're planting things by seed, even with the seed potatoes, which actually, I had potatoes here last year. I will not be putting them in the same spot, because if you saw the blight, we got blight on the potatoes. So these potatoes, they had a couple that I didn't actually get when I was digging up that I missed that we grabbed, which I will harvest because they are still just fine. And you can see it's just starting to go to seed. But because this section had blight, I'm not going to use this as a seed potato. but these are great. I'll go through and pick these up and just take them in the house, and we'll have these for supper. So I will be transferring over, and we'll be moving on this section towards the back is where I'm actually going to be putting the potato crop this year. So it's a decent amount of way from these potatoes that had blight. This section of ground has not ever had any nightshades in it, so no tomatoes, no peppers, or eggplants or potatoes. So we should be far enough away back there and not hopefully have another reinfection of blight coming in. Well, the apple trees are lovely and in bloom. So they're moving along, even though it'll be interesting to see what our fruit crop looks like this year, because even though the apples are all blossoming out and there's not any danger of frost wiping these out, there is something missing. There are no bees, because the bees don't like to be out when it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm a little worried about what the fruit crops are going to look like this year on the ones that do require pollination, and these apples do. I don't know what kind of a crop we're actually going to get, because there's nothing out in the pollination world at the moment because it's just too cold. So we'll see what the year beholds. You never know. I did get my snow peas in, and we got the trellis set up for those. And even though they are a cool weather crop, like there's a lot of things, like it's fine for them to be out as far as temperature wise and soil temperature, but because it is just so cold, my poor little snow peas, they're not very happy. They're not doing hardly anything. They're not growing very much. A lot of these bottom leaves, it's not a nutrient deficiency. It's just been so cold. They're not very happy. I am starting to get a little bit of new growth here at the top. So I'm hopeful that I'll get a crop. It's just making it for an interesting year in the garden. One of the nice things though is when you've got things that have went to seed and they come up all on their own. So hey, could you get out please? Yeah, we don't have the fence up yet. That's another thing we need to get up this month, is get the fence perimeter around the garden. But these are all carrot seeds. So I seed saved carrots, which means you have to let them go to seed. And I didn't get all of the seeds harvested. And so some of them fell to the ground. And this whole area is nothing but carrots. So I will have to go through and thin these. If you have carrots that are too close together, then there's not enough space. And so you'll get really little tiny spindly carrots. You want to make sure that they're thin so that they have enough room for those roots to develop and grow. But this is kind of nice because I didn't actually have to sow any of these in. I'll just go through and thin them, and we'll have a huge carrot crop, which is great. They're a cool weather crop. And I don't know, this year that might be about all I'm going to be able to get out of our garden is the cool weather crops, and even those are going to be a little bit late. Well, with the cool weather, the good news is the onions are doing pretty good. So this is garlic, this far row where that's really tall. So the garlic is doing fine. That's coming along well. And then these two plots are onions. So I did a test this year. If you've been following along with any of our gardening stuff, you'll be seeing that. So this is all onions that I started from seed. This section here was started indoors from seed. And so you can see the size of these guys. And then over here, which are very, very small, these I direct sowed outside underneath a little high tunnel. And they're really small. So we're gonna see how they end up at harvest time. I have a feeling that these ones are not going to be as large. We'll see if they catch up. I don't know that they will. These guys are doing well. And then these are the onion sets that I ordered as sets. And that guy's actually falling over just a little bit. There we go. And you can see they were planted 2 weeks ago. They've already started to develop roots. They're greening up here on these tips, and they're already going into growth season. So we'll see if these can catch up at all, or if these end up being the larger of the bulb once we harvest, which will be probably about usually July is when we can harvest our onions. If you're looking at growing your own food this year and want to know how much to plant per person for a year's worth of food, then go and check out this video.